Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome again, and anyone for the first time here at Gay Buddhist Fellowship, and a number of beautiful new faces. Where is Kay? Kay is our host today, and if you have any questions more about Gay Buddhist Fellowship, he has all the answers. Robina, you're just a hot topic.
Okay.
An item here, but let me give you a formal intro.
Okay, Howard.
If I may.
Yes, whatever.
The Venerable Robina Courtin was ordained as a Tibetan Buddhist nun in Kopan Monastery in 1978. She has worked full-time since then for Lama Thubten Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche's Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition. She is now a director of the Liberation Prison Project, which supports the Buddhist practice of thousands of prisoners in the United States and in Australia. It is a great privilege to welcome you this day.
Happy to be here again. Thank you very much. Shall I just talk about anything?
Yes. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, I thought...
Space.
Okay. Well, first I'll just sing a little prayer in Tibetan. It's this prayer of refuge and sort of reminding ourselves of to have an altruistic motivation, a reason for doing this action of being here together, sitting here listening to these teachings of the Buddha. So just kind of thinking, listen to this, for this 1 hour, to really see if there are any tools there that we can use for our own life, to put ourselves together, to make ourselves more useful human beings for our sake, but of course then for the sake of others. Thinking like that. Sangye chodan soke chodnam la jancho baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chonyen gi pesonam ki drola penche sangye dropa sho sangye chodan soke chodnam la jancho baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chonyen gi pesonam ki drola penche sangye dropa shog sangye chodan soke chodnam la jancho baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chonyen gi pesonam ki drola penche sangye dropa shog. Well, I think let me talk today a bit about karma. This word that's really probably in all the English dictionaries by now, isn't it? And used probably as many ways as there are people in this room, no doubt, also. So let's just look a bit at maybe what it means, and of course the point of it being the experiential implication for our life. So really, one way you could say, given that Buddha doesn't assert a creator, then how do things come into being? Then it's kind of the big question. Well, the Buddha really would say that karma is like, almost you could say is his creative principle, is the name of the law, and he would call it a natural law that determines whatever occurs. And where it occurs, first and foremost, is in minds, consciousnesses. So the term in Tibetan, it's interesting, the term in Tibetan for what we would say sentient being or living being or something like that, as opposed to, say, if you're a Christian, the Christian will talk about souls, usually only referring to humans, but the Buddha would include all beings. And the term in Tibetan is very nice. It's sem chen, and it means mind possessor, consciousness possessor. So being a consciousness possessor, a mind possessor, Buddha says, then this law of karma is what determines our experiences, in fact, even who we are, So it's a Sanskrit word, it means action. But it has this kind of dynamic meaning of implying a reaction, action-reaction. So in other words, it's this another way of saying cause and effect. So we can see in the West, we're geniuses at this. We really are brilliant at understanding the causes and conditions that need to come together to make flowers and make computers. And so that's why we can manipulate the energy of the world so marvelously because we know the laws really well. But when it comes to developing happiness and suffering, Buddha says we've really lost the plot, you know. We don't understand it all. We have it all wrong. We don't understand the causes and conditions for happiness and suffering. So what he is saying is the causes and conditions, the main causes and conditions for happiness and suffering are within our mind. Whereas if you look at the way we normally are, as far as we're concerned, it's all out there, you know. Why am I happy? Because you did something kind. Why am I suffering? Because she did something, you know, mean. This is the logic of the world. We can see this. And the Buddha would say, I'm sure we'd call that cause and effect, but he says we've got it wrong. Not moralistically wrong, just simply wrong, inaccurate. It's like you've got the wrong recipe. You'll never get the result, you know. So what he's saying is this law of cause and effect is really, as I said, it's a natural law, like gravity, you know. I mean, Mr. whoever he was, Mr. Newton, wasn't it? The Apple Man. Mr. Newton, he didn't invent gravity. We know that. He didn't have a vision the night before and then come and produce it, you know. We know that he observed something and then he gave it name, gave it words, he articulated it. Einstein didn't invent relativity. And that's a crucial point. This is a crucial point, actually. We know that he observed things and then he came up with this theory and then he, confident with his findings, then presented it. And he's not telling us to believe it. This is that's exactly the Buddha. Not in the usual way that we think of religion, you know. Oh, I believe in karma. I don't believe in karma. Well, you know, it doesn't matter whether you believe in it. Believing isn't the point. You don't believe in relativity. Oh, yeah, I believe in relativity. No, I don't believe in relativity. That's not the point, is it? One has to learn to discover it for oneself, to find the truth of it. Because, you know, relativity is either right or it's wrong, you know. And this is very much the approach that the Buddha takes. So his findings are that minds create actions. Every split second of our thoughts, in other words, simply speaking, is an action. In the dynamic sense that, in using another analogy now, like a seed that leaves an imprint in the mind that then produces results. And the results happen to be our own experiences. So in one sense, you really could say that Buddha's saying we kind of create ourselves, we produce ourselves. And it's quite accurate, actually. The more we get our head around karma and its implications, the more we can really see this. So the point here then is, I mean, as you may know, of course, in the Tibetan tradition, especially in the Tibetan tradition, they have these big monastic universities in Tibet where they study extensively, which is coming from the Indian universities before that, you know, before Tibet, 7th, 8th century, Nalanda Monastery, for example, where they study in depth the Buddha's philosophy, the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha's findings, if you like. And so there are extensive, you know, teachings on karma by the Buddha. And so to get our head around karma, we have to understand what the mind is. And again, this is, you know, there are very kind of extensive and profound teachings on exactly the nature of mind, the nature of consciousness. And it's a crucial thing. We really want to deeply understand the Buddha and how he talks and therefore how to practice it. You know, this is one approach, certainly. Then it's really important to understand what is mind, because karma occurs first and foremost in the mind, which is why Buddha says the mind makes things, the mind creates things. It's not meant to be some kind of cliche. It's sort of precisely true according to Buddha's model, you know. So mind or consciousness, at various levels. In the more esoteric teachings in Buddhism, they have this very nice model of mind where they talk about gross consciousness, subtle consciousness, and very subtle consciousness, just different levels of conscious awareness. So we live mostly at the gross level, which is conceptual and sensory. And as far as the Western world is concerned, isn't it? That's all that's posited, you know. We have the brain. They think the West thinks it's the brain, you know, and that's the gross level. Well, the Buddha would assert far more refined, more subtle levels of awareness, because the function of consciousness is cognition or awareness. And it's the living part of us, you know. You can say that your mind is the difference between dead you and live you. Consciousness is there if you're alive, and if you're turning into some rotting stuff and ready for the body bag, you know, then you're dead. Because what's left is the consciousness. What's gone, what's left the body. So you could say that Buddha kind of agrees with all the different religions in asserting there is something non-physical, but he doesn't call it a soul. He calls it mind altogether. But he doesn't agree with all the religions, though, in asserting a creator. And he disagrees completely with all the materialist view, which says that you're made by your parents. You come from your parents. So it's interesting, this point. We can say really that all the religions and the materialist view share one thing in common, that someone else made you. Now it's a really interesting concept. We just assume this on this earth. Whether you're materialist or Christian, say, someone made you. If you're materialist, it's your mummy and daddy, you know. They got together and they make you. That's actually what we think, isn't it? You didn't exist the moment before conception. And, you know, twinkle in their eye, off they went, and they make you, you know. That's how we kind of think. Well, Buddha thinks it's a very wacky idea. He says they give you a body, no problem, no argument with this. Egg and sperm come together, you know. And so he also disagrees with the religious view that says someone else makes you. Superior or not, he thinks that's a wacky idea too. In fact, it's the idea that someone else can make you altogether is just a very odd concept, according to the Buddha. But it's something, you check it, it's deep in the bones of our being. And it's really at the basis of our whole philosophical view of why happiness and why suffering. It's always someone who does it to us, isn't it? But someone made us. I didn't ask to get born, it's not my fault, you know. So you make me happy and you make me suffer. This whole dualistic view really very much is what is argued by the Buddhist view of karma. It's very interesting. And experientially really empowering if we can get our head around it, you know. So, of course, to really look at it from the big picture point of view, to really get the experiential implications so we can use it in our life, we've got to kind of take on board at least the idea, and any decent scientist, remember, will take something as a hypothesis. You don't have to swallow it whole, just like Einstein. He's not asking you to swallow it whole. He asks you to think about it. Same here with the Buddha. So, you know, the Buddha's teachings would assert that this mind of ours, this consciousness, that's at the very subtle level of consciousness, which is what left the past body at the time of death, not more than 7 weeks later enters the egg and sperm of your busy mummy and daddy, you know? Or however we get conceived now, petri dishes and things, isn't it? But you know, what causes the egg and sperm, in fact, in Buddhist terms, what causes that egg and sperm to come together and stay together and to sort of multiply and then grow into the body of you is the entry of your consciousness. Well, from where? Well, a simple way to think about this, a simple way to think of this, and this is really the cause and effect process, that your consciousness, think of it as a river of mental moments. The thoughts and feelings of this moment naturally come from the previous moment. And the thoughts and feelings of this moment come from the previous moment. It's like a river of mental moments, a continuity of mind. One of the terms they use is mental continuum. Rather than think of it as this little kind of box up here in the head somewhere, you know, where you find all the bits. But it's this kind of continuity of your thoughts and feelings and emotions. And we can see it's working every split second. So we know that even though you don't remember most of what you did today, right? It's a fact. Since we woke up until now, we probably can't account for any, you know, for just a few moments of what we did really do. But we know, even though we don't remember it, there's been this continuity of thoughts and moments, consciousness continuously, isn't it? But we can deduce the same about yesterday. Well, you know, you keep going back, and Buddha would say you'd have to deduce that the moment before conception, your consciousness also, the moment of that presence, of the moment of that consciousness in the egg and sperm, comes from a previous moment of that very river of mental moments. It's the way to think about it. So just take it as a hypothesis, okay? Oh, excuse me. So in order to understand karma, though, it really does help to take this one on board. Because it explains, you know, the Buddhist view is that you didn't get made by your mummy and daddy. You didn't get made by a superior being. And you don't come from nothing. Well, we know simply in this ordinary world, nothing that exists comes from nothing. Even the universe itself. The Dalai Lama, the last 20 years, has been participating in all these conferences. Mind and Life organization runs them. Kind of meeting and talking with the best brains. And there's a lot have been published. They're really marvellous stuff. And as he was discussing with all the scientists, is Big Bang? No problem. Just not the first Big Bang, that's all. So even Big Bangs, you know, there's not the first moment of a thing. We're really into wanting to find the first moment. Well, where did I begin? Where did the universe... Sort of, in other words, if it's out of nothing, which is how we tend to think. So we posit a creator, or we posit mummy and daddy, you know. So, of course, we daren't blame the creator, unless you're Italian. Apparently Italians have very rude words for criticising God. I heard that they say when things go wrong, God is a pig, they say. I mean, my Catholic mother would have fainted if she'd heard that. But anyway, we normally don't like to blame God, but we love to blame our mummy and daddy, don't we? So this dualistic mode of something out there did it to me, something out there caused me even. It's the blame mode, you know. It's the kind of victim blame mode. It's very interesting. So the karmic one, according to Buddha, karma is this word, as I said. It means action, that implies reaction. It's dynamic, action, reaction. Every split second of your thoughts, every moment of thought, unconscious, subconscious, very conscious, doesn't matter, is a karma, an action. Everything you do, therefore, with your body and speech, which, let's face it, are simply the servants of our mind, aren't they, you know? Even the simplest thing, your legs picking yourself up and walking out that door, First has to be the thought. You'd be a bit surprised, if your thought is thinking, I'm going to sit here, and your legs pick you up. Not like that. So the mind runs the show, and the body and speech actually do its job, So the mind, consciousness, that's the fundamental thing that we have to, become really familiar with. Because that's what creates karma, first and foremost, using body and speech as its servants, if you like. And so the basic principle of karma, too, this is where it's based in morality, and morality in Buddhist terms has the simple meaning of, positive and negative actions. Morality is doing and saying and thinking actions, karmas, that don't harm others, minimally, not to mention even actually benefiting others. And so-called immorality is any actions of body, speech and mind that do in fact harm others. It's a very simple kind of basis. And again, it's not because Buddha said so. You've got to keep remembering this. The crucial difference in Buddhism is because he's not a creator. Well, he didn't invent karma. Well, nor did he invent you, nor did he invent morality. Buddha would say that we can look from our experience at what is a positive and negative action. We can use our experience to come to a conclusion about this. It's not something he invented. And being a good person, isn't because Buddha said so. I remember having a discussion with a Catholic friend. And I said, what is it that defines something as a sin, as a negative action? He said it's that which goes against the will of God. So it's because God said it that we shouldn't do. Now, I'm not complaining about that, but that's not the Buddha's view. The Buddha's view is the reason not to do something is because that will harm others. But the real one, first and foremost, to get to is that it will harm oneself. So the fundamental principle of karma, Buddha's saying, is that the actions we do with body, speech and mind that are labelled negative are those that necessarily cause harm to yourself. They leave a seed in your mind that will bring fruits to you. It's like when you eat bad food. It's not you don't get insulted if the doctor tells you if you don't stop eating that you're going to get sick. You don't accuse him of being fundamentalist. You thank him for his kindness. So the Buddha's like this. He's pointing out that actions that harm others are those actions that leave seeds in our mind that bring harm to us. And the actions that we do that are beneficial actions are necessarily those that benefit ourselves. This is the simple principle of morality. So given this then, what we need to then discover is what are the negative actions and what are the positive ones and what are the consequences. And the positive, because everything we do, say and think necessarily is a karma that necessarily leaves a seed in the mind that necessarily ripens as our own experiences. So in this real sense, Buddha is saying we are the prime creators of our experiences. So to really take this on board, like I'm saying, as a hypothesis, you need to have the idea that your consciousness exists at the moment before conception. Because if it didn't, then there is no reason why you should get born to some lousy mother, why someone should beat you up, or indeed why you should be born to some kind mother. There's no logical reason. Because Buddha is saying one of the fundamental things to get with karma is that whatever we experience, whatever we think, whatever we feel, whatever happens to us, the first cause of it is karma. The first cause is action, seeds planted in this river of mental moments called, at this moment, Robinas, in the past, because we all know fruits come after the seeds. And even the causes for being born to this mother, to have that father, to have this abuse, to have that kindness, whatever it is, that is the result of our karma too. So it's in this sense, I mean literally, Buddha's saying we create ourselves. Due to our past karma, we program our minds basically. And then it's on autopilot. By the time it leaves the past body, it's on autopilot and finds its way to the present mother. So we create the cause to have that mother, that father, that abuse, that kindness, that love, that $1 million, that poverty, whatever it might be. There are many causes. Obviously, many things have to come together to produce something. A seed is the first and foremost cause, for example, for a flower. But you can't begin to find the end of a number of conditions you need to enable that seed to ripen. You've got to have water, soil, sun, so many things. So the main cause, the seed, if you like, is the past action, Buddha's saying. And in a way, technically, it's a very simple principle. But it's just that it's hard for us to hear it. Because we hear it in an emotional way, in a blame way, in a guilty way, We hear it in a very heavy way. But it's technically a very simple concept. Your consciousness is a continuity of mental moments. It didn't begin at conception. It won't end at death. Whatever you say, do, and think leaves a seed in that consciousness which will produce your experiences. So, I mean, this idea is not too complicated, really, because we understand it in our own life in other ways, but we don't use these words for it. So what Buddha's saying is, every day, if you're kind and patient and really work on your mind every day, you're going to get the results. It's just logical. You're sowing those seeds. Well, then it's just like if you play piano every day. You're not surprised if you're good at piano. You're not surprised that your practice, you're doing it every day, is why you can accomplish it. That's logic to us. Well, that's all karma is. That if you practice patience, you become that kind of person. If you practice meanness, you become that kind of person. If you practice jealousy, I mean, it's sort of obvious. There's no need to hear it in a kind of emotional, guilty way. Because we need to also know how come we have anything good at all, a decent human life, friends, support, money, not berserk, not out of our brain. I mean, we're all pretty berserk. But the fact that we've got any sanity at all, any kindness, good friends, money, support, jobs, is not just random. It's because we have worked phenomenally hard, sowing those seeds to bring those fruits. So it's a kind of empowering idea. And if you can own the good stuff, it's easy to own the bad, But we blame others for the good as well. It's kind of interesting. Why am I happy? Oh, he was kind to me. Why am I sad? Because he's mean to me. We can't even own the goodness, But the main causes, Buddha says, are inside us. The main ones. Yes, you need other conditions to ripen it. But this concept of the main one, the idea of karma, and therefore the main seed, the main cause being within yourself, it really is empowering. I mean, I have to say, when I first heard the Buddha's teachings, I didn't know what the hell they were talking about half the time. But this one I somehow liked. This karma one, I mean, we all want to grow up. We all want to take responsibility. We all want to be brave and move and change and bear the pain and stop blaming and stop all the hurt and the jealousy and the guilt and the neuroses. We all do, definitely. Well, I mean, this idea of karma is a very potent tool to enable us to do that, So sure, it means we've got to think about this stuff. Maybe it's not, and each of us takes a different view, I mean, there are different ways of presenting Buddha's teachings and Buddhist practice. I know that. I mean, one mightn't hear this, for example, in a Zen monastery. You mightn't even hear it in a Theravadan monastery. So it's up to us very much to find the approach that works for us, to find the tools. Because essentially, the way of understanding something is just a tool, that's all. It all comes down to how you see things. That's how Buddha says. Everything comes down to how you understand it. So if you think about it, actually, if we just assume our parents made us, let's say, and I really mean created us, and I really mean literally created us out of nothing. You didn't exist before, right? That's the normal view. If we take that as a given, and most of us do, and don't question it, Buddha would demand we do question it, then it goes without saying you're going to blame your parents. In fact, this sounds a bit ridiculous, but if your parents really, really, really did create you, and I mean out of nothing, create you, and give you anger and jealousy and neurosis and make you have suffering in your life, well, I'm sorry, you're right to blame them. But we kind of even feel ambivalent about that. We think we shouldn't. But it's very logical, scientifically. I mean, how dare my mother decide to produce me and give me anger and jealousy and neurosis? I mean, what a rude thing to do. You kind of see my point. But we so take it as a given, we don't ever question it, But Buddha does question it. He says it's nonsense. The parents did not give you a mind. They give you a body. They give you a life. But you create the cause to even get those parents. And the tendencies in you, you wake up, you can see, you wake up in this life, you've got anger already. Your mother didn't teach you. I always think of the extreme examples. Poor old Mr. BTK, what was his name? The bind, tortured, killed guy. Remember that poor man? In Kentucky recently, he tortured and killed all those people. Kansas, was it? Well, use extreme examples. Or I think of the other one, Mozart, for example. I mean, we just say, oh wow, they pop out of the blue like this. But Buddha says, no, there's just a bunch of tendencies in their mind. Mozart's good at piano, because he brought his tendencies with him, Hitler's good at doing whatever he did. Mother Teresa, BTK, whatever. You look at the personality, and if someone's good at it, whether it's piano or anger, then you have to deduce they've practiced it. So, okay, it's confusing for us if you did think Mozart's mummy made him, then we can't see that he's practiced, so we don't know why he's good at piano and writing his little sonatas at the age of 6, We just think, oh, well, no one knows. Well, Buddha has this view, okay? Sort of interesting. So even this view of karma even allows you to take responsibility for who you are and for the lousy father or or the good mother, for example, rather than this constant kind of, well, I don't know why I'm born. No one knows. It's not my fault. I didn't ask to get born. And then all this stuff's kind of thrown at us, seemingly from left field. I mean, no, it's no wonder we're based in, it's so much based in fear, that view. Whereas the Buddha says, at any given moment in your mind, whether it's in a 1-year-old body or a 94-year-old body, what's in that mind is there because you've practiced that. Because mind is indestructible. Buddha would say, in fact, if you take the law of cause and effect, mind can't have a beginning, which is a pretty insane idea. Emotionally, really not satisfying. But it's logical if you deduce cause and effect. It's very interesting. If you assert cause and effect. So the implication of this is my real point, Certainly, as I'm saying, for me, as a Buddhist, this is one of the most tasty. Because it really does demand I take responsibility. And that means for the good as well. Because we love to use karma like a big stick, that you beat yourself with. We assume it just refers to the bad stuff. And we get very obsessive about that. But the fact that you have a decent human body, the fact that you've got some reasonable qualities inside you, good friends, even the things we totally take for granted, this is the result of phenomenal morality in the past. Why you have even 1 cent to call your own is because you've practiced generosity in the past. Why people find you pleasing to look at is because you've practiced patience in the past. Why people believe your words is because you haven't lied in the past. This is the creative principle for the Buddha. When you really get down to the nitty-gritty of Buddha's whole entire philosophical view of the universe and how come, this is how he talks. This is it, karma. So it's kind of interesting to be thought about at least. But again, the point is the implication. And it's the one of it's empowering, taking responsibility. So then too, knowing that every single second of my mind, every split second of my thoughts, it's a seed I'm planting in my mind. So from this point of view, one would be very aware of what's going on in the mind, and one would take every single thought seriously. And then one would try to develop the ability to be in control of this. Just like if you understand the law of gardening, you don't just randomly chuck this seed or that seed. You've got to know the nature of the seed, the fruit that it brings, whether you want it, and how to nurture it. Well, the same here. That's what practice is. One way of looking at what practice is, very down to earth, Learning to know your mind really well. Because the mind runs the show. As Lama Yeshe said, we often make the body the boss, but it's not, he says. The mind runs the show. As Lama Zopa says, one of my teachers, the workshop is in the mind. The workshop is in the mind. That's what we need to become familiar with. The mind, our own mind. We love to become familiar with everybody else's mind, but our own mind, So as I've talked often enough here, but I've said it several, use this analogy, and I like it very much. The bird needs 2 wings, Buddha says, wisdom and compassion. So you could say the compassion wing, that's the bodhisattva wing. That's the one where you get on, put your money where your mouth is, and you actually be useful to the world, to others, to dogs and rats and humans, whatever, in whatever way, is necessary. That's the bodhisattva wing. That's the action wing. That's the political activist wing, actually. That's you being useful. But as the Dalai Lama says, you can't, compassion is not enough. You need wisdom. So the wisdom wing, which is where karma comes in, is where you become your own therapist. You know your own mind well. So one simple way to describe the basis for knowing, the infrastructure for knowing your mind is to understand what it means, positive state of mind, negative state of mind. It's very simple, actually. It's not moralistic, and it's not being dumped on us. It's something we can verify from our own experience, So first of all, we all know the words, when we say hate, anger, jealous, kill, lie, depressed, low self-esteem, we know immediately, don't we, that they are painful when they're inside you or when you're on the receiving end. You know that. We just know that. Well, they're labelled the negative ones. And then the positive, we all know the words. Generous, loving, compassionate, wise, forgiving, joyful. We know those. More of those, please. Definitely. We understand that immediately. And so this Buddhist psychological model of the mind is very tasty in the way that it describes these and breaks them down, enabling us to really understand logically why something is labelled negative and therefore causes me suffering and therefore causes me to harm others, and why something is labelled positive, therefore benefits me and therefore necessarily enables me to benefit others. It's something practical. It's not the usual way we think about religion as something you're supposed to believe in, that it's punishment, reward, and like this, which is a deep view in our mind, but it's not the way Buddha's talking. So what is a negative action? Why is it called negative? What are the characteristics? Or in fact, not even just the action, but a negative state of mind. This anger, attachment, jealousy, all these, Well, the root, Buddha, there's some, two main, because it's due to these states of mind that we create negative actions, that we do negative actions. And it's because of the positive ones that we do positive actions, with our body and speech, whatever. So we need to understand this. If our job is to turn this mind into this marvelous thing that it can become, because Buddha would say, remember, all the way to perfection, that's our potential. That's what Buddha means, simply speaking, fully awake. And it's a term used, enlightened, all these words, they're all synonyms. They're words used to refer to simply the person, the mind of the person, that's fully developed in the positive and completely free of the negative. And that's what he is saying we are capable of, psychologically, okay? Now this is a bit shocking and quite radical, because if you go to some therapist, and you go to your therapist and say, I'd like methods, please, to get rid of all anger, all jealousy, all attachment, to become perfect. Well, they'll definitely give you a pill and lock you up, won't they? Really think you're kind of a bit psychotic. But this is exactly what Buddha's saying. Don't mystify, we love all these words, nirvana, and get all holy and meditate. But Buddha's an amazing therapist, and I am not joking. Psychology wasn't coined then, they didn't use the word. But Buddha is dealing only with the mind. He doesn't call soul, he's dealing with mind. And mind, remember, is the word that refers to the entire spectrum of your inner experiences. The gross level, conceptual and sensory, and the subtler levels, which we very rarely access, which the only time we ever touch upon that level is when we have dreams, right? That's the subtle consciousness. So consciousness, mind, are the words given to this entire spectrum of your inner experiences. They're where the workshop is, as I said. So if we have this potential to be blissfully clear, content, wise, happy, blah, 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 then we ought to know the causes of it. And then Buddha would say it's getting rid of the negative and developing the positive. So it's pulling out those seeds and growing those ones. So we better know a bit of botany here, What is a negative one? How do you find it? What are its characteristics? What is a positive one? How do we grow them? It's a practical issue. We really do mystify spiritual practice, Kind of all airy-fairy, la-di-da, mysterious. And it's kind of copping out. It's a bit sort of intellectually lazy, We'd rather sometimes just believe in something. But it's not the approach at all, not Buddha's approach. You've got to be very precise, very clear. That's what wisdom is. So these negative actions, what is it that determines something, say for example anger or jealousy, things we know well, or something more subtle than this, attachment, which is harder to see as negative because we use that word very differently in our culture. So Buddha uses in Buddhist psychology there are various terms that refer to these negative states of mind. They're like synonyms. One is the term disturbing emotion. That's fairly clear, You just check the last time you were jealous. You don't go, wow, that was great. You know it was disturbing. To you. Don't worry about it. Not forget about anybody else. Anger, all of them, they're all disturbing. They're painful. They're disturbing. The very having of them alone is in the nature of suffering. There's just no doubt about this. Then there's another characteristic, and we've talked about this in the past, that really gets right into the nitty-gritty of Buddha's kind of wisdom teachings about how the very mind works and how we create karma. And this is another synonym, and it's the word delusion, delusional. So Buddha would say that the state of mind called anger, attachment, jealousy, and this is what he's dealing with. Nothing highfalutin. This stuff is what he's dealing with. They have this characteristic of being negative states of mind, disturbing states of mind, and what makes them this way is that they're liars, they're delusional. That when we're caught up in any one of those, to whatever extent, it's to that extent we're not in touch, we're not in sync with how things actually exist. And this is a very interesting concept, and it really is at the very heart of understanding how Buddha talks. That he says, with the presence of these delusions in our mind, to whatever extent, it's to this extent that we're not in touch with reality, that we therefore suffer and therefore harm others. So the job, is to identify these negative states of mind and gradually go against them, deconstruct them, stop giving them power, And that's the tough part, because he's saying we've been having them for eons. We came fully programmed with this stuff. No one taught you how to get angry. No one taught poor Mr. BTK how to torture and kill people. He had powerful tendencies in his mind that he brought with us. No one taught Mozart. I mean, they did, but they were right there. The tendency was so strong, These tendencies are in our mind from day one. We didn't come in as a blank slate. There are tendencies there, that we'd practiced before. The body left, the mind left that body, and it was programmed and found its way very precisely to this present mother. This is how the Buddha says. So then we come fully programmed. We can see the characteristics we had as a little girl, little boy. We can see they're not really that different. We're still the same person, We can see this. Okay, we've really worked with what we are. We've lessened some and hope to kind of practice, in terms of practice, changing ourselves. But essentially, the same old tendencies, the same old fantasy trips, the same old anger, the same old jealousy. It's like broken record, isn't it? And we can remember that back as far as we can remember, tiny little kids. And it's very clear. My mother didn't teach me to be angry. No way. They don't teach us to be loving and kind. They do, but what I'm getting at is the tendencies are in the mind. Mozart's teacher really, got great results from Mozart because the tendencies were so strong, so good at music. Anger, love, kindness, the emotions are exactly the same. No difference, Buddha says. So this negative states of mind, they are the ones that cause us to do the nutty things, harm ourselves and harm others. Like I said, have this characteristic of being delusional. And this gets us to really see what really Buddha's talking, how when you read Buddha's teachings and you see he's talking about how everything is concepts. And when it comes down to it, these negative emotions, because we feel them at this level, the emotional level, when we get in touch with our mind through meditation, we get to see the mind in the bare bones of it. We're going to see that all these unhappy emotions and the positive emotions are like the packaging on top of, around the bare thoughts. So we really can get down to this and see that attachment is a series of concepts that exaggerate, and that's how they're all delusional. They don't see things accurately, they exaggerate. All the delusions exaggerate, embellish what's there. So attachment embellishes the deliciousness of that tape recorder, or that CD player, or DVD, or 3MP, or MPG, or whatever they're called now, I don't know. You understand my point. Attachment to that means that it looks really gorgeous to you, and you hanker after it, and you really believe that it's got these inherent delicious qualities in it, and you really believe that when you get it, you'll get happy. Now, we all recognise that. That's called attachment, and that runs the show. Basically, Buddha says, according to the Four Noble Truths, attachment is the delusion that runs the show, And its energy is dissatisfaction, so deeply programmed inside us. The painful sense of lacking something. So what it does is then causes, to look out there, and then it dumps itself, this attachment, onto something, people, things, events, sounds, smells. For Mr. BTK, killing and torturing. For somebody else, a nice handsome male body. For somebody else, dollars, whatever it might be. Attachment is limitless in its capacity to find things to dump itself on, to then project itself onto and believe when I get that, I'll get happy, And it feels like that, doesn't it? There's this powerful feeling in the body, everywhere. That's the consequence of having had it for so long, Buddha says. And so what we do then is we believe that story. We believe that strong feeling that arises that tells me that when I get that, I'll get happy. We believe that 100%. We never question it, never doubt it. But when we discover, after having got it and having had it for a while, that we're still not happy, we then think, oh, well, didn't work, I better get another one. So Buddha says we've been doing that for eons. Continuously, because what he's saying very simply is that delusions are liars. Tape recorders cannot make you happy. Handsome bodies do not make you happy. Binding and killing certainly does not make you happy. They bring some good feeling because of the habit, but it doesn't last. And then if you keep having it, it'll become revolting. So it's kind of like, this is how he talks in the Four Noble Truths. That this is the way the mind lies to us. But because we've been doing these lies and believing in them for so long, and because we have enormous vested interest in this, because that's the habit, then it's very, very painful to change, but hard to change. So aversion, which is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants, and it arises 1,000,000 times a day, because attachment can't get what it wants all the time. No way. Aversion, annoyance, irritation, frustration, anger, they're all variations. They're all expressions of this fundamental state of mind called aversion, which is a direct result, the opposite of attachment. And basically it's the response of thwarted attachment. So these two go intimately together, attachment and anger, which is very curious because we don't think like that. Attachment and anger go together. They're absolutely linked. There's no way you'd have anger if you didn't have attachment. Impossible. Anger is the response when attachment, which is the one running the show, is thwarted. And the one that drives us running the show is this motor of attachment, this constant sense of lacking, this constant sense of neediness, wanting, ever so subtle level, you know. And it's ancient in the mind. This is the way Buddha talks, okay? This is the deepest delusion. Okay, even deeper than this is the one that they call ignorance, but marigpa in Tibetan, unawareness, a primordial unawareness about how finally everything really does exist. And this one is the one that even runs attachment. But effectively in day-to-day life it's attachment, you know. So this ignorance, known colloquially as ego grasping, this is the one that is the sense of self that we have that's so primordial. That when it's, you know, it's and the energy that runs this one, which is the basis of attachment, anger and all the rest, it's the root delusion. Its nature is fear. Just its nature is fear. When you've realized emptiness, as I said, when you've cut the root of the neurotic eye, there is no fear. And if you look at all your own emotions, attachment, anger, jealousy, you really look into your feelings, look into them carefully, you're going to see they're all totally fear-based. And the fear all around I. Everything is I. You know, this neurotic, narrow, fearful, concrete sense of self. And this is the biggest mistake of all, the biggest delusion that Buddha would say. Completely runs even the show of attachment, which is day-to-day life. So nirvana, you know, is simply the word referring to the state of mind of the person who's cut all this. So it's a psychological process, not joking. Nirvana is a psychological state. It's not some place called heaven. But you've got to go and give up, you know, delicious sex, drugs and rock and roll. Not like that. Which is how we think about it in this religious holy way. In our fundamentalist way, we think of samsara is kind of sexy and lovely and we've got to sort of sadly say goodbye to it and go to boring old holy nirvana. It really is not like that, I swear. I mean, we're so pathetic, you know. Isn't it? That's how we think. But really, we're talking psychologically here. The person who's achieved nirvana is an amazing, stunning, joyful, blissful, wise, compassionate, really fun-loving, happy person. You'd love them. You know, well, that's what we can become, Buddha says. When all the fears are gone, all the stuff's been deconstructed and cut out, you know. And why we can get rid of these negative states of mind is because they are concepts, because they are thoughts. They're a story about something. So, you know, you have to learn to know what the correct story is and slowly deconstruct the wrong stories. So it's a long-term job, but this is the job, you know. Because every single one of these thoughts is creating is an action, leaving a seed that brings results. So, 10 to 12. I know you guys finish at noon, so you better have some.
To take questions.
Yeah, now we can have some questions. If you have any questions.
What would be the one or two best books about Mahayana Buddhism that have the best teachings most clearly expressed the way you've done it this morning?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know actually. I can only. I think. I have to say the way I'm talking here is the Western way of talking, which has come from my studies of the Tibetans and the Asians, because they don't talk like this. They don't talk like this. But every word I'm saying here is Buddha's. You know, it's true, it's correct. Hopefully I have not told a lie. I'm not misrepresenting the Buddha. So this is, you understand? So, I mean, but I can't say. I don't know what book there is. There's an awful lot of books, as you know. But yes, there are so many, I know. So it's right, you know, it's... Oh, what to say? I can't tell you, I don't know. You have to look up the bookshop. I don't know, I'm so sorry.
Google.
You have to go and get a copy of this tape. That'll do. There you go. Yes?
Yeah, the continuity of karma suggests an identity, which seems not to be...
I understand exactly. Continuity of consciousness, absolutely. But the interesting thing is, this is where we can get really caught up in this no-self business, where we chuck the baby out with the bathwater. As it says in the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is nothing other than form, and form is nothing other than emptiness. So basically, in order for you to find the emptiness, the no-self nature of a cup, you have to posit a cup first. So you must posit, what's your name? Jim. You've got to posit Jim before you find the selfless nature of Jim. So the no-self doesn't contradict self, basically. No, it's a question of how the cup exists. This is the point about what Buddha's saying, that the delusions in the mind project onto things, embellish onto things, or as Lama Zopa puts it, decorate on top of what is already there, layers upon layers of things that aren't there. So self or chocolate cake, it doesn't matter what the word is, there is a chocolate cake, but not in the way we think there is a chocolate cake, and that's the tricky bit. It's not as if Buddha's saying there's no chocolate cake. It's not as if he's saying there's no Jim. There clearly is a Jim, but we decorate on top of ourself and everything else, and that's the part that we have to get rid of.
Thank you very much.
That's the point. Yes. That's the middle way. Yes.
Since there is no book you can recommend...
I can recommend an awful lot, but go on.
Can you briefly discuss then some ways to get started breaking the cycles of delusion and suffering?
Yes, really. The first step is to even like what you've heard. That's a good step. To like it. Then think, oh yeah, that sounds good. I'd like to try that. That's the first step. Because that means you've got to want to look at your own mind. And that's a pretty brave thing to do, It's a tall order. But that's a marvellous thing. So the very first step, the simplest way, would be you start 5 minutes of this kind of meditation. Just 5. Be humble. Do 5 minutes. 30 minutes, probably 90% of it's spacing out, 5 minutes, you can keep some really kind of quality 5 minutes. And the long-term result, the long-term goal of this kind of meditation that there's a kind of meditation called single point of concentration, right? And there's two main kinds of meditation, thousands of techniques. The long-term goal of that is to get really focused, sharp, clear mind, that goes real deep to the very subtle level. But immediately the benefit for us is that we start to notice what's happening. That's, you think about it, from the second we wake up until the time we go to bed, we're totally engaged with the outside world. We know what's going on in here, but usually only when it's very loud. So we've got to start focusing primarily on this. So even just for 5 minutes, you're sitting down, and the discipline to do that already is pretty intense. We don't like to do it. We rush off. We're so following the usual thing. Get up, have the coffee, go to work, whatever. But to take 5 minutes, just 5, and settle your body, get it kind of comfortable, and then focus. Whatever one you do here, or you focus on your breath, it's really good to anchor you to the breath. Just 5 minutes. You've got to notice all the crazy thoughts. This kind of just there it is, and you're not looking at anything else, so you can't get distracted. You don't follow it all, but you can't help but hear it. And that's what we need to do. We need to learn to notice what on earth is going on in here, well before it comes out the mouth, which is about the only time we notice it now. Do you see my point? So already fantastic to do this. And then you just start reading stuff, and you find your own way, there's so many ways, so many traditions of Buddhism, so many approaches. And in the end, we've got to find the ones that suit ourselves, And that's just from reading and talking, looking, really wanting it, really aspiring to it. This is the way to start. And then have long-term patience. Long-term patience. Where? Oh, yes. Yes.
I just wanted to talk about the external and changing things out there.
Yes.
And in my own personal experience, when I've been in a bad relationship, or been in a bad job, or been really sick,
yes,
and I've changed the job, or I've gotten out of a relationship, where I started to feel better, so I could go to the gym again and
that's
date,
right.
and
yes.
Those things didn't make me happy, but they made the negative emotion feel less.
You mean moving away from the object?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Oh, no, there's no doubt. If you sort of take... Of course, there's no doubt about that. But the point that Buddha's making is not that things don't impact upon us. You cannot deny that somebody, you can have an intensely good experience of happiness and joy if you have a nice body in front of you there. You can't deny there's a lot of pleasure that comes from that. That's called happiness. Buddha's not saying that's not true. And he's not saying that if someone punches you in the nose, you don't feel suffering. He is saying that we give all the power to the outside. So we're like junkies that believe that I can't be happy unless I have the fix, and I'm only happy when I get the fix. So all he's saying is there's still external things. Clearly, we live in an external world. We live in the world of interdependent phenomena. But he says when we can factor in our own mind, our own attitude, our own approaches, and get them slowly to see that they are the ones that are the main cause of my suffering, not the person being mean to me. Because when you can change your mind, even someone punches you, your mind won't suffer. You can change your mind, you won't even then suffer. That's a fact. These are the things that what Buddha's trying to say.
You can probably be in a bad job and be okay with that.
Yeah, because you really realise it's like, because your main job is working on your mind, therefore, it's like Lance Armstrong going up those mountains. Don't tell me he didn't feel intense pain. But that pain was a really good indicator of progress. Well, then the emotional pain is an indicator of progress if you're working on your mind. If you're just falling into the trap of blaming, then you'll just be utterly miserable and you'll be frantic to get away from that person. But if you're really working on your mind, then you're grateful that that person's actions are causing you to be even just irritated. You're thinking, okay, look, they're showing me I've got anger. More work to do here, more muscles to grow. That's the approach. Then your whole view of the world is different. I swear.
So what would cause you to kind of work on the job, work on your mind if you're feeling unhappy versus change the job or get out?
Because you'd see that that's where you've got to be, right? You kind of have a sense that you haven't finished what you've got to do yet. That relationship's got some stuff there. It's worth it. There's something worthwhile in that relationship, and it's a really you've got a connection with that person, and it's an opportunity to develop yourself. At some point, you have enough wisdom to know when it's time to go, But we usually go now only because the little baby attachment doesn't get what he wants. So we rush off and get another object and another one. And then you understand, it's a bottomless pit. I mean, we don't have, the other extreme is to be a masochist and sit in that relationship as a total victim. That's a disaster. That person has got to have the courage to leave, Do you understand? It's really tricky, but the key in both cases is really learning to know your mind well and labeling accurately what's happening. And then you get so much strength from that. Then the reason you would leave is because it's finished, not because, he didn't do what I wanted. He was mean to me, which is the usual one. You understand? It's a very different motivation. It's a much more kind of altruistic reason. Because you're really on this, you're really working away in your own mind. This relationship now is just finished. You just kind of know. You know that when you're working from this point of view. Do you see what I'm saying? But we can be so tricky with ourselves. We've got to be very careful. Yeah.
Robina, you're really stirring the pot here. We only have a few more minutes.
I know that, that's right.
Are you going to be around afterwards for a few minutes?
I double booked myself today. That's why I didn't come to the meditation. There's something back there that I'm supposed to be at, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes. So we don't get finished.
Just a couple more
yes, go on.
questions,
Please do.
Yes. I was wondering whether you can explain a little bit more about the connection between the death and the rebirth.
Yes.
We understand that how the birth connects to death.
Yes, that's right.
Relationship,
no, that's a good point.
But the death to
birth, sure.
Like if there is one mind from the one death to birth, then how can we have population growth, for example?
There's many realms. Buddha would assert that humans are only one tiny percentage of all the sem-chens, all the mind possessors, animals, spirits, many kinds. Trillions upon trillions of consciousnesses, all taking different kinds of rebirths based upon their karma. So there's a very good book that describes this. Of course, always in technical terms, but it's very interesting. It's called Death, Intermediate State and Rebirth. Death, Intermediate State and Rebirth. You know the Professor Jeffrey Hopkins? You know of him? You've heard of him? He translated that. There's some really good literature on this anyway, on the process itself of how, at the time of death, the karma that ripens, that sort of puts your mind on autopilot, then it goes through the process of death, and then it goes to this intermediate state, it's like a dream state, and then eventually when the new parents are there ready and waiting, you go, off you go. That's a quick way of saying it. In very untechnical terms. But there are really good, lots of good. The Tibetan Buddhist literature has a lot of this stuff. So, the Tibetan Buddhist literature has a lot of this stuff, and a lot of good scholars in this country especially publishing really good things. But they're practitioners as well, so it's not just intellectual boring stuff. It's very tasty. You had a question. And then you had a question back there. Oh gosh, you did too. Go on.
I was wondering, when I hear your attachment comments, as a person, when I have a goal, then when I'm struggling to get it, I feel like attachments help me sometimes.
What, darling? What?
Attachments?
Yeah.
Help me keep going.
Okay, listen.
And sometimes when I like thinking in a Buddhist way,
Yeah.
and like try to not like to
I know.
have any attachments.
Yeah, but you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And the distinction here is distinguishing between a positive aspiration for a positive reason to do something rather than just the I-centered neurotic little boy that wants to get what he wants, which is the usual one. So saying I want that is not in its nature negative. I'm going to say I want to walk out that door. Now, the difference would be if I'm attached to walking out that door, what that would make me do is be very upset with all the people in my way. I get all upset and hurt. So attachment is a neurotic neediness to get something. A clear aspiration to do something is a very positive thing. You can have very strong, but you've got to look at your motivation. Why do I want to do this thing? You want to do it to help develop yourself and help others, then honey, that's not attachment. Do you see my point? We have to distinguish. Attachment's a little boy in there that's greedy and needy and manipulative, you know? That's attachment. So we've got it, but we can change our motivation by... How you learn to change is by stating these new thoughts. Okay, I want to achieve this so I can be a better human being, so I can be useful to others. Meanwhile, have fun, you know? Don't be holy about it. Do you see?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, one more.
Where are you? Somebody here had a hand. Yes.
I'm really new to this, so I'm trying to make this understand a little better.
Sure.
With the conscious. So it seems like at the point of sperm and the egg meet, and that
Yes.
our minds freely choose to become who we are.
Well, not so much choose, but propelled by your habits.
Okay,
So karma propels you.
previous,
Yes, your past actions. You
Right.
kind of programmed your consciousness, and then when you left the body, you know, they'd say at the time of death, even for you to have this particular human form as opposed to a lion's form, very strong habit of morality, of non-killing and non-harming would have been accumulated by you. So then that karma ripened at the time of that death and then propelled your consciousness into your present mother's womb.
Okay. So it's almost like a recycling pattern from the mind, just repeating the mind. I mean, it's an ongoing process as we are living. And so if our mind perceived to choose to be who we are in a different body the next time around, so maybe the mind is being humble and pick, like, let's say, someone who has a really hard life.
Sure. No, when you're very developed, they say these bodhisattvas, this term they use for like these highly evolved beings who've got a lot of power and can choose exactly. We don't really choose, we're just on autopilot. You know, your karma takes care, you know. Your mind just goes there, depending on the karma you created. But for people who are very developed, absolutely, they can take very suffering lives, they can take definitely. That's exactly what they would do to help them clean themselves up and benefit others.
So that would be help people blaming themselves for who I am, what I am, because presumably my path chose at the beginning to...
Very much so, yeah, and there's no reason to blame. I mean, there's very reason to rejoice. The fact that we're human, Buddha would say that's pretty stunning. I mean, we just take that for granted. We think we're a bunch of creeps, you know. But in terms of possibility and capability, humans, we've got a lot of marvelous potential. So that you would have to have accumulated a lot of virtuous karma to become a human, Buddha says. So we should be over the moon every day and delighting. Not just all the time with all this self-pity we have, you know. It's really not appropriate. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Robina, oh my goodness, we bow in gratitude.
So good, all these seeds, may they ripen as quickly as possible. All these thoughts have gone in, even if we don't remember most of the last hour, doesn't matter. The seeds have gone in, so may they ripen into the development of our amazing potential for our sake and the sake of others. Just think like that. Jamchub, can I sing a prayer? Jamchub semchog rinpoche ma kye panam ke gyuchig kye panyam pa me payang gom ne gom du kabasho.
It's time to share some of the announcements of the Sangha. Okay.
Yes, I'm Kay, and I'm the host this morning, and so please enjoy refreshment and tea.
I'll see you guys next time. I have to go to this other thing. I feel very naughty. I did do things wrong. But I'm happy to come again anytime, you know that. If you want me, I'm just saying. I'm not forcing. So we can talk more.
We will, when Jimmy comes back, offer gratitude to him. He worked like hell to get her to be here. She's in such a great demand, and heaven and hell blessed us this great day.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.